AfterBuzz TV, starting place to the likes of WWE female superstars Kathy Kelly, Sonya Deville, and Zelina Vega proudly presents Women's Wrestling Weekly, the world's first podcast and YouTube series dedicated exclusively to women's wrestling, featuring all the latest news as well as interviews with top superstars in the industry. And now, AfterBuzz TV's own gorgeous lady of wrestling, TK Trinidad.
Bonjour, you're watching Women's Wrestling Weekly. My name is TK Trinidad, aka the Canadian Assassin, and we have a full house. Thank you so much for watching Women's Wrestling Weekly, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. That is fact, folks. We're going to start with the co-host right beside me. He hails from Crooklyn. Please welcome Kings County Kid, Flobito.com.
Woo! Thank you so much for having me, TK. I love this show. I love to be a part of it. I do.
Next, she hails from the valleys of California, Southern California. She is the farmer's daughter. We just don't know who the farmer is. Please welcome Emily May.
Hey, everyone. It's a surprise. You gotta wait. You gotta find out.
Like Lana. It's a surprise. Now, this woman, we have been chatting, trying to get her on the show, and, you know, it just, life has been happening. We finally got her on the show, and she's in studio. She's been in the game for 20 years. You have seen her on almost every wrestling promotion in the business. You currently see her on WOW. Please welcome Amber O'Neal.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming in.
We have been trying to make this happen for a long time.
And I really appreciate it. Like, I mean, life happens, especially in the industry, especially in wrestling and entertainment. Life happens, so I really appreciate you for coming in. So
I appreciate you for having me.
Yay!
Life and bumps.
Life and bumps. There it is. So we're gonna do the show a little bit different when we have somebody in studio, a live guest. So we're gonna start with the news first. So Flobito, what do we have for the news?
For sure.
AfterBuzz TV News.
Love that drop. This one comes from Diva Dirt. An all-women's NXT show was announced. This show will be in Jacksonville, Florida on December 5th. Now, the card has been subject to change, but this is actually a really big move because the fact is this year we don't even have an Evolution yet. We don't have a WWE Evolution.
Or Mae Young.
Or Mae Young Classic,
Young,
but
yeah.
I do think they're both on the horizon. But this being at the NXT level, which is pretty much a hot brand, having all-women talent. Guys, tell us about this.
Amber first.
Okay. Well, as exciting as it is that they are finally, giving women the spotlight in the WWE, I have a lot of friends in NXT. I'm extremely happy for them. But I do feel like that they are a little bit behind because, no offense, but I feel like WWE likes to claim that they started the women's revolution, but actually the women's revolution started a long time ago. And it did start with David McLean when the Glow promotion organization happened. And then he actually proceeded with this vision when WOW had the first women's pay-per-view in the early 2000s. We were talking earlier, Unleashed. And this was 20 years ago, because I was just starting out, and I was a huge fan of that show. I was a huge fan of Lana Starr, and I feel like that as exciting as it is that WWE is doing all of these fantastic things for women's wrestling, I do feel like they're a little far behind, and I feel like that they are not responsible for starting the women's revolution. They are just responsible for giving women a huge spotlight recently. That's my thoughts.
Yeah.
Hot take.
Yeah, I just... It's one of those things where we did have Mae Young, we did have Evolution last year, and why is it just relegated to NXT? Why didn't they make it across the brands? There's so many great wrestlers that we haven't seen. If you watch me on Raw and NXT, the after shows, I have been... my favorites we barely see. Sorry, Flobito. My favorites we barely see due to storylines, due to whatever is going on, and it'd be so nice to see some great storylines amongst all the wrestlers across all three brands, which you can't necessarily do from week to week.
So,
I mean, I'm just happy that they're actually doing something this year.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, but then, I hope Evolution and Mae Young do come back, and it's not one of those things that, because last year was such a big time for the women's movement in general, not just in wrestling, that they just took advantage of that. And it's like, okay, here you guys go, and then we never see it again.
Sure.
So I hope that's not going to be the case.
It's true. Speaking of WWE and the women's division, announced for tomorrow's Crown Jewel event in Saudi Arabia, Lacey Evans is taking on Natalya, and I think the first match on a co-branded pay-per-view as far as the women's division and men's division. We had one match before with Sasha Banks and Alexa Bliss, but this is the first time I can think of at a Crown Jewel branded event having two ladies' talents. big news when it comes to the Saudi culture being open to that. And women's wrestling is an equation of wrestling too. But the idea, like you were saying before, Amber, of it happening just a little bit on the end of things.
A little bit late, a little bit behind.
Yeah. And like, I feel like
just a little too late.
Yeah, a little too late. I feel like a lot of people were waiting for some type of announcement
Right.
of the lineup, and this came out today. So,
I mean, Crown Jewel.
Were you surprised though? Did you think that women's match was going to happen at this event?
I am surprised, but sometimes it feels like, you know, when we were talking on Raw, etc., that Crown Jewel is almost a one-off. Like, yes, they try to make it inclusive and they incorporate it onto the shows. They have been doing that for weeks. But because of all the accoutrement that has been attached to it since this has started, it's just kind of like, it's still kind of gucky. So if they didn't, I wouldn't have clamored for it. I'm glad that these two women have the opportunity, but it's one of those things where if you're gonna do that, then you should also make time for Mae Young and Evolution.
Sure.
Agree.
Anybody, I guess what I would say is great props for Natalia. I mean, being able to be the one to be, or one of the two in that match.
Fellow Canadian.
Yes, and she is a fantastic person. She is somebody who's very deserving. So I'm very happy for her.
And finally today, Celeste Bonin becomes the first ever Slamforce Africa Women's Champion. The former wrestler known as Caitlyn, and also appeared in the Mae Young Classic, that tournament we talked about with such fondness. Faced off against the longest reigning ladies champion in South African wrestling history, Black Widow, as far as also with Impact Wrestling knockout Katie Forbes. So she became the first ever Slamforce Africa champion. That says a lot about new territories, new areas, especially someone like for Caitlyn or Celeste, having her story going with her demons and then coming back into wrestling and having a bit of achievement there.
Yeah, amazing. They actually tagged us so in the championship, so we reposted it, and it's just, I've said this before, it's a great time. It's a great time for people who love wrestling. Yeah. I don't necessarily think it's a great time for people who are paid to watch wrestling, because now we have to watch 20 hours of wrestling and there's really not enough. It is a lot. Like,
I've noticed.
I know, it's whatever. I've been like trying to catch up on, you know, AEW, and I'm like 2 weeks behind. So it's just like, it is a lot for me, but that's just, you know, first world problems, my problems.
Yeah.
But it's a great time for wrestlers, because there's more opportunities.
Exactly.
And you can travel the world. I know, I believe Jamaica also started a promotion as well. Cool. So it's why not? Yeah. And female wrestlers are able to wrestle, and they're not just eye candy, and they're not, you know, and valet. Nothing, no shade to valets, but they're not just, you know, secondary.
Well, they're actually being treated like athletes that they are, and that's exciting. And there's more opportunities for that globally, which is important to have that message, because young girls are going to be watching these shows either on YouTube or, you know, on TV, and they need to see that representation.
Yeah.
And that last article was from Squared Circle Sirens, and that's today's news segment.
Well, thank you, Flobito.com.
No problem.
That was great.
Amber O'Neal.
Yeah.
Yes. You have been in the game for a very long time. Not in like, that sounded terrible, but you know what I'm saying.
Great.
It's okay. It doesn't feel that long. It actually feels more like 10 years.
So tell us, like, from when you started to now, how women's wrestling has changed.
Wow. It's changed tremendously. That would take a whole interview. But when I first started,
Got all the time.
when I first started, I was trained by Leilani Kai, who is a legend. I was very lucky to be introduced to her. And you know, she performed in the first ever WrestleMania and the first ever Survivor Series. So women, I think she was definitely like a trailblazer in where we are now. And I think that when we're giving women those credits, we forget that era of women. But when I first started, it was definitely one girls match. It was the popcorn match, you know, and now I think, you know, with women, like WOW having its own all women's wrestling show, like the first ever, other than Glow, all women's wrestling show, and we have like Charlotte and Becky and those girls like headlining, you know, major events like Raw, Trish and Lita, you know, had some main events. Those are two of my favorites. And now AEW and Impact, they're all just really spotlighting women, and we've really worked hard to get to where it is now, and I could not be more proud to have been on this journey with all of these lovely ladies.
Now, where do you hope to see it go? Is there certain things where you're like, okay, we're here and this is amazing, but I want to see this happen?
That's a really good question. I would have to say, like, as far as myself, I would love to just see it keep growing. Like, I know this is never going to happen, but do you think that WWE and Impact and all these will ever just have an all-women's show, like, branching out on their own? Like WOW is
like
now.
A weekly show.
Like
there
a weekly women's show.
Yeah, there have been talks last year. I think it's definitely possible, but then it comes to one of those things where if you have the weekly women's show, then it's almost like segregation, and I want to see, like, I think Stephanie McMahon said it at one of these things, and she said she wants to see it's almost 50% women and 50% men on the roster, and I think the women's show would be great, but I can't watch any more wrestling.
You don't want to watch another show.
Another brand
right.
split.
But then I also want to see the interaction, like intergender matches.
Yeah.
You know, like how what Tessa's doing, I think single-handedly is changing the game for wrestling in general where women are concerned.
I completely agree. I'm personally enjoying watching her make that blaze that trail, and I'm very happy for her. But, you know, like you said, maybe there's no time for that, and it would be another wrestling show for you to watch.
This is me.
So until then, WOW will have the only all-women's wrestling show, and I'm very proud to be part of that. But, yeah, I agree. It might just be a little much. It might be women's wrestling overkill, and I personally want WOW to always be known for what, you know, what the role that it's playing in wrestling right now, and that is the first ever only all women's wrestling show for women's wrestling fans. And I just say we'll carry that torch and keep it burning.
For sure. We were talking about like women's wrestling as a whole, as an art form, and there's a lot of current talent that talks about like 80s and 90s and how it really was presented a whole different way. You know, you have your Richters and you have like even Mae Young herself. In your estimation, what happened that caused that train to derail a bit in the late 90s, in the early 2000s? Was it essentially a mandate, or was it a different scouting process? Like, why do you think there was a bit of a dip there when it came to the quality of the matches, or even the time given these women on TV?
Okay, I'm not 100% sure if what I'm going to say is correct, but I can tell you what my opinion may be. And, you know, this may be a little contradicting, but, you know, the reason I started wrestling was because I was a huge Sable fan. I literally did not know a lot about wrestling. I just saw her and was like, oh, that looks like it would be a cool job. I want to be a women's wrestler. But then I started watching it, and I became obsessed with like Lita and Trish Stratus and like the real athletes of the industry. But I would have to say, until they came along, there was a dip, almost like degrading for women's wrestling. And I personally feel like that the way that women were being portrayed during that time, like Sable's role and Miss Kitty. So, you know, they were more, their roles in wrestling were like degrading. They weren't like being portrayed as athletes. And I think that there was a lot of bra and panties matches, and just, you know, not a real strong time for women's wrestling. It was more degrading. So even though I did see this beautiful woman on the television that I thought, you know, would be really cool to be a women's wrestler, you know, it wasn't being portrayed as like what it is now. Like, women are being like respected for their athletic ability. And during this time that you're asking me about, it was, you know, just not a proud time for women's wrestling. So I would have to say I blame WWE for spotlighting women that way, because that was the only, WCW and WWE were the only things that we had to go by. So that was what we were seeing. And I just think that also domino affected how everyone was booking the women in wrestling.
So how were you able to break out of that box and create a brand for yourself that was powerful and meaningful for people across the across the wrestling industry?
Well, I think we had to stick to our guns because we were asked to do like a lot of bra and panties matches, you know, stuff like that. We were like, no, you know, we're not interested in doing that. I did start wrestling in a lot of intergender matches, which I loved. That was literally like one of my favorite times because getting to interact with the guys, and then like the guys were like, oh, you know, these girls can really go. And I think Lita and the Hardy Boys and Trish and they were doing a lot of 6-man tags back then. And I just think it was really up to us to stick to our guns and say, no, we don't want to be part of these types of matches. And we would lose bookings. Like we were canceled off shows sometimes, but it was just a matter of sticking to your guns and doing, you know, what we just didn't want to be part of that. So
tell us about WOW. We were talking about it. I saw it, I don't know, 2017. Whenever the first live show was in Los Angeles, like these years are just like blending together. The first live show was in Los Angeles and it was absolutely amazing. And you have been, this is like the reincarnation of WOW, what it was before. What do you think of the new product and, you know, where are you hoping it's going to go?
I am so proud of David and what he has made happen. I am so proud that Jeannie Buss has decided to, you know, give us this platform. And I think it has come a long way since the original, like 2000, even though I'm very grateful for that because I was a huge fan. And that was, you know, these girls, they had these like larger than life characters and it was very different. And I just feel like I've been with David on this journey. I've been working with him since 2011. And the first time he ever told me his vision, I was like, I see what this, I have this similar vision. I understand what he's trying to do. And I've been completely supportive and I've stood by his side. And it's been amazing because there were definitely times that we didn't think anything was going to happen from 2011, 2012. Every year, sometimes twice a year, we were filming another pilot and then we was getting repackaged and then he never gave up. And he is a prime example of someone who had a vision and never let anyone like steer him differently from his vision. And he's had some, we've brought in some really amazing girls like Jessie Jones, you know, who has been wrestling a really long time.
She's amazing. Yeah.
And bringing in Tessa was a huge asset. And you know, I've known Selena Majors for 20 years. Actually, she was one of my first matches, and I just really applaud David and what he's done. And just not letting anyone tell him, oh, this isn't going to work, you know, it's outdated. Like, he just kept repackaging and repackaging. Right. And then, lo and behold, Glow got a Netflix series. Like, timing. Yes, the timing was great. And, you know, he just didn't give up. So I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish. I think it's very inspirational for women all over the world. And my ultimate goal for WOW is to have a weekly television show, and I would love to see us tour the entire world. Nice. Like, that is for what I would love to see.
Now, do you think, because Ivory, when she did the Hall of Fame, she mentioned Glow. Do you think David McLean doesn't get the credit that he deserves? Because when you talk about like wrestling circles and, you know, legends and pioneers in the business, as far as I know, I might miss it, his name is not included in that. So do you think, you know, is there somewhere where his name is included, or is he not getting that credit?
I think that if anyone doesn't give David credit for creating Glow, like that was his creation, like he created that, like single-handedly. Some other people came in and, you know, I think his vision got a little bit steered away from what he was wanting. Yeah. And I think anyone who doesn't give him credit for creating, you know, the all women's wrestling product, like they're seriously just misinformed, because he does deserve that credit, and he is a pioneer, and he did create the first ever all women's wrestling television show, Glow, WOW, and I think that he should definitely get more credit than he gets now. I think that what the Glow television series has turned out to be is definitely steered away from what Glow was. Yeah. So that's a little upsetting, but hey. at least it got a TV show.
Expand on that. What do you mean by that?
I've definitely enjoyed the show, but this last season has definitely just been really out there with the chickens. You know? Like, it is definitely out there, but, you know, it is, the part of the series that is true is the consistency of these girls never giving up and like Bash sticking to his, you know, vision and wanting to create this all women's wrestling show through the ups and downs and the cancellations, and that part is true, but the rest of it is for sure not true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of heartache in the last season.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very true.
Yeah.
The wrestling industry.
A lot of different stories.
I'm curious to see where the next season, if they will give it the send off that it deserves.
Hopefully. Well,
we'll see.
You don't sound too like optimistic.
Well, I mean, it depends because this is a whole nother rabbit hole of things.
Sure.
But the way how Genji, her shows typically go, it kind of gets like kind of mucky in the middle. But she usually, it's like a 50-50 if it's a really good send off. Like I loved Weeds.
Me
that
too.
was one of her shows.
Yeah.
But then like they started traveling. Like wait, what? And then the end was like the season finale was like, but this is not what I wanted. I wanted the old thing back. So anyways, like I said, rabbit hole.
Yeah. We'll have a whole other show about that.
Okay.
Let's talk about the dynamic of the WOW locker room. There are a lot of veteran seasoned talents, and then you guys also open the doors for a lot of new talent to get involved there. Just from your experience, you know, being on the end of someone learning and being more of the veteran side of things, just tell them about the camaraderie there.
You know, it is a very interesting dynamic, but I think it's like for the better. And the reason is I love that David is mixing like homegrown WOW talent, because we have the WOW training center in Long Beach, and some fantastic talent has come out of that school, which makes me very proud. Selena Majors is the main, she's our senior teacher there, and you got to look at people like the Beast and Faith, the Lioness, the Dixie Darlings, Keita, Steffi Slays. These girls are fantastic athletes, and it's definitely opened up the eyes of a lot of female wrestlers who have come in from other promotions, you know, who have just done professional wrestling. And you look at like Beast, who is like a black belt, is it Cravat? Did I say this correctly?
Is it Krav Maga?
Thank you. Yes. And Faith, who is like a singer and a boxer and, you know, a dancer. And like, she's freaking natural. Like, she's going to be a huge star. And I'm just really proud of Dave. I'm actually excited that David has introduced us to like these different types of athletes. Like these girls are professional stunt women. Honestly, these girls are more athletic than a lot of the girls who just do professional wrestling, to tell you the truth. They're gymnasts, and it gives us a lot more to work with. And there is no negativity in the locker room. If anything, these girls are so grateful to be in the locker room with us. I'm grateful to be in the locker room with them. I definitely love helping them, and it's a good mix. I love it. I like the dynamic a lot.
What's some advice that you've given some of the young wrestlers coming up and meeting you for the first time?
You know, I just feel like we're all like chasing the same goal, and we all have, you know, we're all going for the same thing, which is to make WOW as successful as it can be. So I just think it's not just me giving them advice, it's all of us giving each other advice and keeping each other upbeat and positive and keeping the vibes high to like do, you know, succeed what we're working for.
So you've been with a lot of different promotions. You know, currently with WOW, is there any other any talks? Have you been contacted by other promotions as of late that you can discuss with us?
No, and you know, I feel like I've already worked for almost everywhere aside from AEW. But no, I am Team WOW.
So do you have a desire to work with other ones, or are you like this is the, I don't want to say the ending of my career, but this is where I'm gonna finish. Almost like, you know, a basketball player, they finish at this last team.
I understand.
They hang up the hang up the trophy?
The trophy.
I think that WOW, I know that WOW has a very bright future, and it is giving women's wrestling the spotlight that I think it deserves and that I want to be part of. I like the way they are showcasing women and giving us these superhero type characters, these larger than life characters, and I definitely would love to, before I leave this business, I would like for WOW to get a weekly television show. I would love to be able to tour the world like I have with other promotions, and that is the send-off that I would love to have, is with WOW superheroes in that spotlight.
Do you have any, like, if you went on this big tour, which sounds amazing, I would go to every location. Do you have any dream matches of people that you would want to have one last match with?
One more match.
I know, one more match.
So basically, you're saying if I could just wrestle anyone?
Anyone. It could be anyone, not just WOW. It
yeah.
could be any promotion. Someone that you're kind of watching.
Yeah, like a Kobe Bryant tour, like who you want.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a huge LeBron fan.
Okay,
LeBron.
TK, it's okay.
I know.
Well, you know, we are from the same area, Charlotte, and I am very proud of what Charlotte Flair has done. She is representing her father correctly, and she is just, you know, carrying that torch with the best of them. And I could, honestly, because we're from the same area, I do know her dad. I would say just for just the personal love, we're both from Charlotte. You know, I'm good friends with her dad. I've known her since she was in college. I would love to wrestle her.
That would be like the ultimate match.
Yeah.
Ultimate. I love it.
And then what's your most memorable match of your career?
The most memorable, I would have to say, is debuting the first ever women's match, or the women's wrestling in New Japan with Maria Kanellis. We were the two first females to ever lock up in New Japan, and that was a really amazing moment.
You've had a lot of firsts in your career. Is there... This is gonna sound really morbid.
Oh.
Let's not get there. But I'm just... Pulpito's like, what? Like, what do you want to be remembered for?
I would like to be remembered for someone, a woman in this business who just always was represented, you know, in a positive light. And I'm definitely proud of making that history in Japan. And I'm so proud of being part of the first women's wrestling show, you know, weekly women's wrestling show during this era. So I would, it would definitely, and I'm very proud of being an NWA Women's World Champion. So, you know, I think I've accomplished most thing I've set out to do. So as long as, like, I can be remembered, you know, in that light, and knowing, and be remembered for loving this business and giving it my heart every single match and week, day in and day out, I'm cool with being remembered remembered in that light.
I love it. Oh. So we have a lot of, like, we have NWA Power now. We have the New Japan USA is a new division is opening again in the United States, and so we're branching out all these new promotions. How do you feel about that, looking back at what you did in your career and then having these new opportunities for these wrestlers coming up?
I just think it's amazing. Like TK said, it's a good time to be a wrestler. Like, it is a good time to be a wrestler. There's no shortage of work, that's for sure. And it's a good time for wrestling fans. It's just that you guys I hope you'd have DVR, because there's just so much going on.
Right.
But I think it's the most exciting time in probably professional wrestling history.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
We feel it every day. There's always something
yeah,
new.
there's always something. It's like the perfect intersection between social media and wrestling, because you could legitimately not leave your house and watch everything wrestling every hour while you're awake, and then follow social media for all the stories.
Yeah.
It's just...
It's so much content
It's
all
very,
the time.
it's down. I know, content's king. So we have a question in the live chat. Charlene asked, are there any regrets in your career?
No, I don't even believe in regrets, honestly, because for every path that you are taking that you may not understand why you're currently on, I believe that there's a lesson to be learned, and I believe that there's no such thing. Like, I think everything happens like it should. So as hard as some of the struggles have been, I don't regret anything because I now know that it was all for the greater good.
There's so much to talk about, but it's like so little time. So we're gonna do something called Rapid Hot Tags.
Women's Wrestling Rapid Hot Tags.
So what's gonna happen is I'm gonna ask you a question. You're gonna say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Oh.
So always early or always late?
Always late.
It was quick.
Last person you text.
Jesse Jones.
Dream dinner guest.
Ooh. LeBron James.
Please invite me.
You're invited.
Who would play you in a movie?
Blake Lively.
Last show you binge watched.
Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
I just thought of the little promo that you and Lana did in Beverly Hills. That came to mind. If you were a crayon, what color would you be?
I'm sorry?
If you were a crayon, what color would you be?
Turquoise.
If you were on death row, what would be your last meal?
Oddly enough, chicken and rice.
Go what you know.
I know, go with what you know. And last question, you can listen to one album for the rest of your life. What would it be?
Wu-Tang. I love Wu-Tang.
That, I'm not surprised too often, but that definitely, like, the Protect Your Neck Wu-Tang.
Yes, girl.
Wow.
That's why we do Rapid Hot Tags. You never know.
You learn so much.
I know, right? We're going to hit the star of the week real quick.
Pro Wrestling Star of the Week.
Oh yeah, this week's Star of the Week is Nightshade from United Kingdom, born in Buckinghamshire. She's been wrestling since 2014 and has one of the deadliest STOs in the business and wrestled for such promotions as Eve Riot Girls of Wrestling. And she's the current PCW champion at a 440-day reign. That's a long time. At 23 years old, she's already taken the world, her grappling all over the world in 3 different continents, and is continuing to grow. And for putting in the work, for showing she's a champion, she is this week's Star of the Week.
Mic drop.
We're out of time.
Is there any, last question, is there any up-and-coming wrestlers that you are truly excited about to almost carry that torch for wrestling in general?
I would definitely say Faith, the Lioness, is someone that everyone needs to look out for. If you're currently watching season 3 of WOW Superheroes, she is not my favorite right now, but I know talent when I see it. I've been doing this a long time, and she is a natural, and I think that she is going to do big things. Okay. So I would have to say Faith, the Lioness, for sure.
All right. There you have it, folks. Farmer's Daughter, where can people find you?
So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Emily May Heller, M-A-E.
And Amber O'Neal. You guys should be following her, but if you're not,
you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Amber O'Neal, the number 1, AMBERONEAL, number 1. And don't forget to follow at WOW Superheroes.
And Flobito.com.
Yeah, right there. At Flobo Boys on Twitter, at Flobito on Instagram, and then Flobito.com. New content every week. Love it.
Thank you guys so much for watching the show. We really, really appreciate it. Without you guys, we wouldn't be the number 1 women's wrestling show on the planet. This is fact, guys. Look it up. Other than that, you can follow us on WPW Weekly. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I saw you guys in the chat. Make sure you hit that like button. Leave your comments. Let us know who you want to see on the show. And you can follow me on everything at TK Trinidad. Till next week, guys. Thank you so much, Amber, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the tuning in to Women's Wrestling Weekly. To help TK, the crew, and women's wrestling in general. From executive producer Kevin Undergaro, producer TK Trinidad, and me, Maria Menounos, we would like to thank you for tuning in to Women's Wrestling Weekly. To help TK, the crew, and women's wrestling in general, we ask that you subscribe, rate, and comment on Women's Wrestling Weekly at Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to our AfterBuzz TV wrestling channel on YouTube for this and other outstanding wrestling content. Buzz you later.